Hi everyone, I'm Samantha and here's my trusty companion for the past month or so. I took the new Canon EOS R6 Mark II for a spin over the holiday season and it proved to be a pretty pleasant experience. Those who have tried shooting on the original R6 can vouch for its very versatile abilities, including its reliable image stabilization as well as its low light sensitivity. Launched just 2 years after, the Mark II isn't just a slightly updated version of the original R6. In fact, Canon has given this new camera significant physical and performance changes. What you get is a full-frame mirrorless camera with a higher resolution, better low light sensitivity, and faster shooting all around. But is this camera truly an all-rounder? And most importantly, is it worth an upgrade if you already own the R6? Here's our verdict. Let's talk about the look and feel of this camera. If you're already familiar with Canon EOS bodies, then using this camera should be quite a breeze for you. The Mark II has an almost identical feel to its predecessor, with the same grip, the same curves, and almost the same button placement. Although Canon claims that this model is dust and water resistant, we doubt it's to the same degree as the more high-end models like the R3 and the R5. When shooting with it, the camera body feels very sturdy and substantial, with the dials and buttons mostly at very intuitive spots. We've got the index finger on the shutter button, the thumb on the top plate, as well as a large dial at the back for easy access. That said, there's a few physical differences between the R6 and Mark II, including the on-off switch, which has been moved from the left shoulder to the right. The left now has a dedicated stills/video switch that's very similar to the former power switch. However, the switch wasn't as stiff as I have liked it, and I found myself accidentally switching to video mode when I wanted to shoot the stills. Meanwhile, videographers will be pretty happy to know that a brand new Q2 menu gives them a specialized quick menu to adjust your video settings, while the Q1 menu remains dedicated to photo settings. Apart from that new mode switch, the Mark II has also removed the small dedicated lock button on the top deck. This button is now combined into the camera's on-off switch, and it basically does the same thing, allowing you to lock the camera settings and disabling the controls to prevent accidentally pressing the buttons or moving the dials. Although Canon bodies tend to have very well-designed dials, I was actually hoping for a bit more tactile feedback to know that I have successfully pressed the buttons even without looking at them. The EVF is the same as its predecessors and it's got a pleasingly large 0.5-inch OLED monitor with 3.69 million dots resolution and a smooth 120 FPS refresh rate. This makes it great for tracking fast-moving subjects. Meanwhile, the viewfinder offers a 0.76 times magnification ratio and a sharp 120 FPS refresh rate. The 3-inch vari-angle LCD screen remains the same as before, with Clearview LCD2 anti-smudge and anti-reflection coatings giving you fast-free viewing. You'll find that the ports and connectivity are very similar to that of the R6, with the same ports along the left side, including a 3.5mm headphone and microphone jacks, a Type D micro HDMI port, a remote jack, as well as a USB 3.2 Gen 2 Type-C port. Next, let's talk about the sensor. The highlight of the Mark II's new features has to be its 24.2-megapixel full-frame sensor. This is up from the original's 20-megapixel sensor. Although it's not a very significant increase, this new sensor count allows the Mark II to match the resolution of many enthusiast-level cameras in the market. And if you're not using your images for commercial print purposes, then I would say this new sensor count wouldn't matter that much to you. With that said, the new sensor does allow the camera to produce very little noise at very high ISO settings. This allows low-light photos to look even more sharp and detailed compared to the ones shot on the original R6. I found this especially obvious when I shot Christmas lights in the evening, so zooming into each photo showed that the color and the contrast were very well and accurately depicted. The new Mark II features the dual-pixel CMOS AF, with AF points covering 100% of the image area. However, it's noteworthy that despite having a higher resolution sensor, the Mark II has a lower number of user selection AF compared to the original R6, from 6,072 down to 4,897. Let's move on to the autofocus. Just like the original R6, The Mark II's Dual Pixel 2 autofocus works effortlessly in almost all lighting conditions. Compared to its predecessor, the new body has incorporated even more machine learning in its AF algorithms. Plus, it's also inherited some new technology from its flagship EOS R3. While this unfortunately doesn't include R3's eye-controlled AF system, we think that the improved stickiness is pretty obvious in tracking fast-moving subjects. Beyond the people and animal options on the original R6, the Mark II also offers new subject tracking modes, including a vehicle option optimized for motorsports, aircraft including helicopters and even trains. Great news for plane spotters, this should allow you to capture aircraft flying overhead without missing a beat. And if you're traveling and going on safari drives, you'll be glad to know that the animal tracking modes has support for horses and zebras as well, with the camera set to recognize both the eyes and the head. I enjoyed using the point selection autofocus because sharp focus was easily attained for any point that I dropped the pin on. So this was pretty obvious when I was shooting someone's ring on their finger or even parts of their hair. And as for humans, the subject tracking allowed the camera to rapidly lock on either the face or the eye, even in low light conditions. The camera can also be set to focus on either the left or the right eye, or even automatically choose the closest eye. Plus, it's even possible to set a custom button to toggle back and forth between either eye manually. I found this feature especially useful when shooting humans in a room full of people, especially at festive gatherings. So even when people were moving out and in of my frame, the tracking was still pretty accurate. Fast-moving subjects like kids and animals were captured in a pretty sharp manner, with the exception of a few unfocused shots. However, when shooting in the evening against the bright festive lights, the camera occasionally focused wrongly on the background rather than the subject in the foreground. When it came to birds and animals, I found that the autofocus was a bit of a hit and miss. While animals partially hidden by foliage and trees were picked up by the autofocus, the camera sometimes mistook the body for the head and vice versa. Darker fur and feathers weren't so well captured, especially if the sunlight was harsh. Meanwhile, shooting pet portraits in an indoor environment like someone's home proved to be pretty easy for the camera as the background tended to be a little less cluttered. Shooting still life like a vase of flowers really showed off the camera's ability to capture vibrant hues down to the smallest detail like each petal. And if there's one lens you're hoping to get with the camera, I highly recommend the 24-105 f4 lens. As a very compact and multifunctional zoom lens, I'll say it's versatile enough for almost any shooting situation. With image stabilization up to 5 stops, I found that shooting handheld gave me very sharp images as well. Plus point, the lens also has an additional control ring on the barrel that could be customized to control exposure settings, shutter speed, aperture, ISO, and exposure compensation. This gives you better control, especially when you're shooting through the electronic viewfinder. Another noteworthy new feature is the camera's RAW burst mode, which adds even more helpful features on top of the camera's 40 FPS shooting capabilities. And if you don't like the idea of missing all these precious moments, this feature should put your worries at rest. Here's how it works. When shooting a burst of raw images, the camera groups everything together into playback mode under a single thumbnail. So now you can just scroll through all the photos in the thumbnail and pick out the ones that look the best to you. Although this only works with the electronic shutter, it will help you to nail a decisive moment, especially when you're shooting fast-moving subjects like dancers or sportsmen. The RAW burst mode also includes an optional pre-shooting feature where a half press of the shutter informs the camera to begin buffering frames. And once the shutter is fully pressed, the camera will capture a half second of buffered pre-clicked images, followed by the rest of the shots in the burst sequence. I tried this out when shooting portraits and I found that this mode helped me capture natural-looking and interesting expressions, which I might have otherwise missed. For me, the R6 Mark II checks off most of the boxes when it comes to a full-frame camera meant for enthusiasts and even pros. Priced at $4,388 with the kit lens, this is a pretty competitive option among other mid-range models. Bumping up to 24 megapixels might not be a super bold move, but I would say it's pretty necessary considering that this sensor count has become somewhat of a standard in the market these days. I personally like that the autofocus system is very reliable in most shooting conditions and the 40 FPS really keeps the shooting experience tight. If you already own the original R6, then I would say an upgrade might not be immediately necessary if you're just shooting casually. However, professionals and enthusiasts might want to consider the new model if they're hoping to take advantage of the low light sensitivity and the higher pixel count. Alright, that's all from me today. Don't forget to like, follow and subscribe to Tech360 TV. I'll see you in the next one.